Ladies and gentlemen, it's scooter time. Are you ready for scooter time? Here's our host who will make your liver shiver. He will make your knees freeze. Ladies and gentlemen, the scooter star himself, Dagwood Street.
This episode of the Electric Scooter Podcast, while the topic is first-time scooter buyers, it still, hopefully, will be interesting to everybody. Even those who already own a scooter, who know what they want, who own 2 or 3 scooters. Because you know what? If you own a scooter, you're probably going to run into somebody who wants to buy a scooter, who is interested in scooters, and they are going to ask for advice. My first piece of advice would be, even though we're not affiliated, it's just the smart thing to do. Go to the Electric Scooter Guide. It's electric-scooter.guide. Go to that online and check out some of their YouTube videos. It's the smart thing to do. The first question that you're going to ask yourself, or you're going to hear from other people, prospective first-time scooter buyers, is how much. I would say a decent first scooter, you should probably pay $500, but if you have a chance to try a bunch of different scooters, you've already ridden some scooters, you may want to dip a little deeper into them pockets because, like most things in life, more money buys you more scooter and more safety features. As a motorcyclist, I've often heard, hey, if you got a $40 head, buy a $40 helmet. And that's to get people to buy Shoei, Arai, or some of the more expensive helmets. Later on, it turned out, actually, that some of the cheaper helmets did pretty well. But I use that as an analogy to scooters because a little more money in a scooter will get you hydraulic brakes. A big, big deal. Some of the brakes are so primitive. We're talking Fred Flintstone stuff, to where you have a floppy rear fender and you step on it and it comes in contact with the rear fender with the rear tire to actually slow you down. You know, that's maybe extreme, and the scooters that do have that feature, it's usually a backup. But you do want, if you can afford it, hydraulic brakes, and you want lighting on the rear. One of the podcasts, and we talked about the Taur, T-A-U-R, Taur.com, T-A-U-R.com, which has a rear brake light, and it's on, I believe, when the headlight's on also, that shines on the rider's back. That's awesome. That's the only scooter I've ever seen with that feature. But that gives you a good example of, just imagine yourself riding down a lonely highway at night and you see a little teeny light on the right. You don't know if that's just something reflecting off the street, or somebody dropped something or whatever. Hopefully you're going to know that's someone on a skateboard or a scooter, but maybe not. Maybe the street isn't lit very well. But if the person has a flashing red light on the back of their helmet and reflective vest and a light shining on their back, in addition to that little teeny red dot over the rear tire, it just might save your life. So just keep in mind, when buying your first scooter, more money, it might actually save you money in the long run, not just in doctor bills, but also, my experience was, my first scooter was $700. It was a Fluid Freeride Horizon, and it wasn't long till I wanted more because I enjoyed it. It put a smile on my face, so I wanted to go off-road. I wanted bigger tires, I wanted this and that, and I still use it. Guests come over and ride the Horizon, or I'll ride it if I'm just going to the corner store to pick up a can of Beets. But I primarily ride the Cabo Wolf Warrior, and you may fall into that category too. So going ahead and purchasing a high-end, or let's say $1,200 to $1,600 scooter as your first scooter, maybe a Mantis, or there are a number of scooters that fall into that. I think Kim has a couple. That might actually save you money in the long run. Instead of having two scooters, you get the scooter that you really like the first time. It's the electric. Scooter. Podcast. From Las Vegas. Where it's hot. The Electric Scooter Podcast. One of the things that you are going to ask yourself after price is use case. Use case is, are you going to be a commuter? Are you going to and from work, to and from school? Weather is going to be a factor. How much you weigh, how much of a speed demon or daredevil you are. All those things you really need to take into consideration. I also have a very low-end scooter. I have a Go Track, which I purchased on Amazon for $250, and that still gets used. I cruised down to San Diego from Las Vegas, not on my scooter, but I wanted to throw it in my car, and it was the lightest scooter that I own, and since it's $250, it's the one I was least worried about. So those super budget scooters have their place also, and that might not be a bad idea to start out first with a super budget scooter and then skip the intermediate and go ahead and go into the $1,200 to $1,600. You're also going to ask yourself, what kind of distance are you going? There's a scooter that Voro Motors sells called the eMove Cruiser. There's a couple other ones. So you're going to definitely look at range and how important that is to you. How about topography? Do you live in San Francisco? You going up and down hills? Then you're going to need some battery power. And then there are performance electric scooters. Sorry, I rented these lips. I'm just getting used to them. They run, I would say, $1,400 up to, if you're talking about Ryan, those are super expensive. But Wolf Warrior's about $2,400 to $3,000, depending on which model you get. I would say $4,000, $2,000 to $4,000, let's say, for performance, and that is a thrill ride. Apollo has the Ludicrous, Cabo has the Wolf Warrior and the Wolf King. Dualtron has a number of models. So that is something that you're also going to want to look at. The use case. What are you going to be using it for? So price, range, use case, how much you weigh. Every scooter that you look at will say this is how many pounds of rider we recommend for this scooter. So that's also going to be a big deal. For some people, speed demons, top speed is going to be an issue, and that your rider weight and topography obviously will also play a major factor in that. Suspension. One of the things I would say is a high-end suspension, there are good things and bad things. The good thing is that, hey, you've got a good suspension and a comfortable ride. But the other thing is there may be a little more maintenance with that. Now, if you're getting a lower-end scooter, you might forego the suspension completely as long as you have pneumatic tires. By pneumatic tires, I mean tires that are filled with air, preferably tubeless. Pneumatic tires spread when they hit the surface that you're riding on, and the friction and the heating up of the rubber and everything just provides you with a lot safer and a lot more comfortable of a ride. I would say in order of types of suspension, rubber suspension is the best, hydraulic or air piston, and then maybe a spring piston, followed by no suspension at all. I mean, being the lowest category, no suspension at all, but at least having pneumatic tires. Some people might like that. Sports cars, you want to feel the road. If you have no suspension and pneumatic tires, you are going to feel the road. And that is going to be a good thing, again, if you're a speed demon, you're doing it for fun, and depending on what type of surface you're riding on. Lighting is also a big deal. That's another safety issue. Brakes are huge. I mentioned earlier, if you can get hydraulic brakes, that is optimum in many ways. Not just safety, a better feel, and of course, if they're hydraulic, they're going to be disc brakes, but also the fact that you're going to have less maintenance. If you have a cable that squeezes onto the disc like a lot of bicycles have, you're going to be adjusting that cable, and you might get lazy, and the time when you really need it, you might not be able to stop when you want to stop. So hydraulic brakes are definitely optimum. If it's a $100 upgrade or so on the scooter you're looking at, go ahead and spring that extra money. It's well worth it. Other types of brakes are drum brakes and foot brakes, the Fred Flintstone kind, where you step on the rear fender and it pushes down on the rear tire, slowing you down. It does have some stopping power, but really you would rather have drum brakes. People are, may diss drum brakes, but if you're riding in wet conditions, drum brakes, or even really super dusty like I do, drum brakes are a good way to go. I think the most stopping power and most bang for the buck is probably going to be disc brakes, but the lowest maintenance obviously would be the foot brake, and it followed by the drum brake. Drum brake is not going to have much maintenance. Disc brakes, it's not a lot of maintenance, but just like disc brakes on a car or bicycle or anything else. The electronic braking systems, I'm not a fan of. I generally turn it off because sometimes they go on and off quickly, and it's just a weird feeling, and I don't like it. But the regenerative brakes, which are the weakest, though, may add a little bit of juice to your battery and take you a little bit further. Carrying a heavy load where the rubber meets the road. And now, here is a big deal for me, tires. I just say the bigger the better. If you could get a scooter with massive bicycle tires on it, like the Super Glide 4.0 sold in Victoria, Canada, that is great because you're going to cruise through potholes. And if you watch the Timothy West video where he reviewed it, women were actually throwing themselves at him as he cruised down the road. I think that was just coincidental. She probably, YouTuber, and I want to be on your video. But anyway, he didn't even seem to notice it, but I thought it was hilarious. So there are 3 types of tires that I'm aware of: solid tires, honeycomb tires, and pneumatic tires. Solid tires, you could consider maybe honeycomb as a type of solid tire. Well, there's actually a 4th, which is foam-filled. I haven't had the chance to see or ride, but foam-filled, that might be a good isthmus. Ooh, $20 word. Between the pneumatic tire and honeycomb tire, because it's pretty much a pneumatic tire that's filled with foam, so probably unlikely to get a flat. Now, honeycomb tires, they give you a pretty decent ride. They're a little more slippery. They don't have as great sticking power as the pneumatic tires, but you will never have to fill them with air or change out a tube or anything. I know Ben Fox, if you watch Ben Fox's YouTube channel, which if you don't, you should. He likes the honeycomb tires and solid tires because he's less worried about crashing than he is about doing maintenance. I, myself, definitely, if you were to ride the 3 of them, you would choose pneumatic or air-filled tires every single time, I guarantee you. But solid tires, you're going to go a long ways, and you're not going to ever worry about being stranded because of a flat tire. However, this goes for the honeycomb tires as well. A couple times just slamming on the brakes in an emergency type situation and you get a flat spot on your tire, you're going to either live with a wabada for the rest of the time that you ride that tire, or you're going to replace it. And replacing tires in general is just not a fun thing to do. What about riding in the rain? Don't want to fall and break my brain. Certain parts of the country are going to be wet. I'm talking about Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Portland, wherever you live, you know whether it's wet or not. I live in Las Vegas. IP rating is not important to me. But if it is important to you, then look to see if the scooter has an IP rating. IP 1 to 3 means has a little bit of water protection. 4 to 6, you could probably ride it in the rain. And if it's IP 7 or above, whoa, you could supposedly dunk that thing in the water and come out the other side being okay. Now here, this final topic I want to mention to beginners, actually there are so many that I could talk about, but I just wanted to aim one podcast specifically at beginners, and that is who you buy your electric scooter from. If you forget everything I said in this podcast, but remember one thing, please don't buy on Alibaba or direct from China, even if it's going to save you $150, $200. Trust me, it's not worth it. You will regret it. These scooters, most of them are made up of parts from different factories. Like you want to start a scooter company. So you buy your stem from this company, you buy your batteries from Samsung or LG, you buy your tires from this place, you decide what kind of handlebars, you decide whether you want a thumb throttle or a trigger throttle. Trigger throttle is what you use with your index finger, and it's going to be more stable going over bumps. If you're on flat, smooth streets, you may prefer a thumb throttle. It's better to try both. I prefer the trigger. I go over a lot of bumps. I do a lot of off-road. So they're going to buy these different parts, which you will see a lot of common parts on different scooters, where your scooter folds on the handlebars. There's usually something that you spin with your hands, or you just pull it, or whatever, and you'll see on a lot of different scooters, hey, that looks exactly the same as on mine or on my buddies. Same thing with the throttle. There's a QS, S4, they have different names for it. The Mini Motors has the i3, and you'll see those same throttles on lots of different scooters. Because of that, they're just buying from a lot of different, it's like making your own Frankenstein computer, you know, you hope the ports fit and sync up and everything. So it's just a recipe for disaster. If you want to buy something bulletproof, look at the electric scooter guide. When I talked to Chuck Temple, the founder of ESG, he said that the 9bot Max, go back and listen what model it is, or go to their webpage to get exactly which one. But he said the 9bot Max is pretty solid, and he could easily recommend that to people. But it was a specific model of the 9bot Max. So go back and listen to episode 8 of the Electric Scooter Podcast. And I'm not doing this as clickbait like the news does, you know. They say, after this commercial, we'll tell you how you're guaranteed to live to 120. So stay tuned. I just don't remember. I remember it's a 9bot Max, one of the 9bot Max models. So we mentioned a few distributors during that podcast: Apollo, Rev Rides, Fluid Freeride, Voro Motors, companies that are based in the United States. Now, you're still going to have issues with scooters thrown together from different factories in China, put on a boat, and sent to America. Here's the difference. With those distributors that I mentioned, they're going to get that box with a scooter in it. They're going to pull it out, wrench on it a little bit, tighten things up. They know things that typically go wrong because they see it over and over, and they get complaints from customers. So they know, okay, I need to put a zip tie here. I need to tighten up where the light is attached to the front of the stem. The collapsing mechanism, I need to, turn this bolt or whatever, and then they send it to you. Yes, that's big, but is that the most important aspect? No, it's when something goes wrong, you can pick up a telephone and have somebody to talk to. I'm going to say this again. If you forget everything I said in this podcast and only remember one thing, buy from a reputable distributor. The ones I can think of off the top of my head that I know are good are Voro Motors, Rev Rides, Fluid Free Ride, Apollo, and there are others. Do your research. Look on the forums. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of scooter forums out there, at least that I've been able to find. So, hey, you got the Electric Scooter Podcast to answer at least a lot of those questions. So, buy domestic. Do not buy from China because warranty, customer support, maintenance, frequency of repairs, preventative maintenance is going to be on you, but you can pick up a phone and talk to somebody or chat with them online, and they can tell you, oh, yeah, you just need to tighten up this screw or that. Here's a good way how to prevent a flat tire. Here's the PSI for your tire, how much air you need in it, all those types of things. Let's look at this case scenario. As I said, use case. Let's say you weigh 170 pounds. It's your first scooter, and you're using it to go back and forth to work. Look for something with probably, I would say, 20-mile range. Something that weighs maybe under 40 pounds. Make sure at least the front or rear brake is at least drum or disc, preferably hydraulics, but again, you're going to pay more for that. Get on board. The train's about to leave the station. The Electric Scooter Podcast. Get on. Everybody now. Get with me. It's coming at you. A new episode. Electric Scooter Podcast. It's electric. It's electric. Yeah, you know you want it. Listen. Put it in your ear. The next scenario would be you want a scooter just to have fun. There are a couple things you need to ask yourself. First, about yourself. Are you healthy? Do you have good balance? Have you ridden scooters before? Are you going to mainly be riding on or off-road? If you're riding off-road, try to get knobby tires. These types of scooters fall generally into the beast category. I'm talking Wolf Warrior, Wolf King, 011X, Curious, Weephead. There's a few of them. Look them up. Do your research. And don't forget, when you're factoring price, to add protective gear. You're going to want a full face helmet and either motorcycle pants and jacket or elbow pads and knee pads. Wear whatever shoes you like, but I would make sure they cover the ankle. And don't forget gloves. When we spoke to Paul Somerville of the Electric Scooter Guide, he recommended HELD, H-E-L-D, as very high quality but expensive gloves. He mentioned he has a pair that is kangaroo skin on the outside, and the palms are made of stingray. That might set you back a couple rupees, but well worth it. Because when you fall, what do? You put your hands out. That's what I do, and that's what most people do. The next case scenario is travel. This is going to be a very small segment of first-time scooter buyers, but Levy has a scooter with a removable battery that comes just under the weight limit so that you can bring it on an airplane. You can actually remove the battery. It sits in the handlebar stem. There's a tab that you pull. Put it in your backpack. Carry that in your backpack on the airplane and fold the Levy, collapse it down, put it in a duffel bag, and check it in with your luggage. That way, when you arrive, boom, boom, you pull it out. There's a couple advantages to that. You could also get a couple batteries, and if you run out of juice, you just toss in another battery. The other aspect is weight. W-E-I-G-H-T, weight. So you might be getting on and off trains or taxis, Ubers, buses. In that case, weight is going to be a huge concern, and how small it collapses. Unagi makes a few scooters that are pretty sleek looking, fold easily. There's a new one coming up called Tower, T-A-U-R, like Minotaur. Maybe, I assume it's pronounced Tor, actually, because Minotaur, T-A-U-R, and they're not out yet, but they are coming soon. In fact, they're scheduled to be available in September. I don't have pricing yet, but the light is a maximum of 300 lumens, which is about half of what a car has as far as capability of lighting. I know it does only go supposedly 10, 12, 15 miles, so that is one downside to the Tour. It does have hydraulic brakes, which is a good thing, and it's supposed to be all weather. The styling is really, really cool. It's probably going to come in, I would say, double the price of the Levy. The Levy's $500 with a swappable battery in the steering column. The Levy also has a thumb throttle. Like I said, it's good for air travel. It is front-wheel drive, which I would prefer rear-wheel drive. And I believe the rear fender has the Fred Flintstone step on the fender to slow yourself down, which is, not the primary brake system, but it is a backup. The Tour, however, really, really looks cool. What I don't like, it has these, you stand side by side, has these foldable, not pedals, but foot pads, I guess you'd call them. One on each side, one on the left, one on the right, and you're obviously facing forward and your feet are side by side. I do not ride scooters, skateboards, or surfboards like that, so that would be a tough sell for me. But stylistically speaking, it is pretty cool. So to recap, we talked about whether you're going to go cheap, intermediate, or expensive, and whether you're using it to commute, for fun, or for traveling. I myself really like the idea of being able to take, for example, the Levy, take the battery out, put it in your backpack, and catch an airplane to wherever you're going, Washington, D.C., Florida, wherever it happens to be, and get your scooter out, pop that battery in, and speed off. That's pretty cool. And for $500, I don't know. Depends what your use case is. So let's quickly now, before we end, we like to keep it around half an hour. I will make a couple suggestions for scooters. And to be honest, I'm using not just my experience, but the electric scooter guide. I'm basically looking at their statistics and drawing from their videos and my discussions with employees there my recommendations. And here they are. For the best scooter under $1,000 for the first-time scooter buyer, it's the Segway 9Bot Max. Tested top speed is 18 miles per hour. Range is 28 miles. It weighs 42 pounds. The max rider weight is 220 pounds. It does have an IPX rating of 5 for water resistance. And pre-slimed tubeless pneumatic tires. That'll run you in the neighborhood of $750 to $800. Maybe shell out a little bit more money, $75 or $100, and get the Fluid Freeride Horizon. If you got a bunch of money burning a hole in your pocket and you want to get something that's really cool, what the Electric Scooter Guide calls an exotic scooter. It does have the single-sided swing arm like Ducati. Take a look at the $2,600 Inokim Oxo, InokimOXO, designed in Israel, where there are a lot of scooter riders, scooteristas, scooteros, and scooter heads. They are serious about scooters in Israel. It has 2 dual 1,000-watt brushless motors. It'll go up to 40 miles per hour. It does have pneumatic tires. However, they're not tubeless, which is kind of a bummer. But it also has a very good thumb throttle and probably the best suspension of any scooter with the rubber suspension. And it'll take you about 50 miles on that thing with a roomy deck, front and rear full hydraulic disc brakes. This might be one I'd go for, but I would really like to see the tubeless pneumatic tires. We already discussed for travelers, I would go with the Levy, but there's also Unagi and E2 or E12, E-T-W-O-W. There are a lot of ones out there that are good for traveling that are light. I would take a serious look at the Levy. And the final category is Beast, and I would go just bang for buck, solid, sturdy durability. I'd go with the Wolf King. If you can't go for that extra $500 of the Wolf King with that beautiful gold paint, then get the Wolf Warrior. It's solid. So those are just broad suggestions. You got to look at everything we discussed earlier, your weight, topography, weather, budget, all those different things, and find the scooter that's right for you. But basically, if you can, hydraulic brakes, good lighting, decent suspension, pneumatic tubeless tires are ideal. And that about wraps it up. We're over 33 minutes now for the Electric Scooter Podcast. A lot of exciting episodes coming up in the future. Stay tuned and keep the shiny side up and the dirty side down.